welcome to your deep dive. Today, we're going to dig into how manufacturers are striking gold. And not with some flashy new product launch, but get this, with something called the aftermarket. Like those must-have replacement parts, essential services, those upgrades and things you'd ever think about until you absolutely need them.
It's funny how that works, right? And what I find really interesting here is how it's not just about, squeezing every last penny out of a sale. It's about building something more meaningful with your customer, fostering loyalty, building that trust that keeps them coming back.
Right, exactly. It's like when you walk into your favorite coffee shop and the barista, without even saying a word, starts brewing your usual latte just as you're reaching for your wallet. It's about that connection. And we actually have some really interesting stuff lined up today on how companies are using this whole revenue lifecycle management thing. They're playing the long game here, not just going for that quick sale.
That's it. Revenue lifecycle management in manufacturing, it's about changing the whole game. We're moving away from just chasing that initial sale and really focusing on the entire customer journey. Think of it like this: being there for the customer every step of the way, from the second they first buy that product through every interaction they have, especially when it comes to those aftermarket needs.
So it's kind of like building a relationship, making the customer feel valued even after that first purchase.
Yeah.
But how does that actually translate into making the business work?
It creates a win-win. A customer that feels good, feels supported, they're going to come back, right? And this is where things get interesting, because this is where the aftermarket comes in. This is where the money is. A lot of folks don't realize that. It's not just about selling a product. It's about nurturing an actual relationship.
Okay, so we're talking reorders, those replacement parts, service agreements, all the stuff that keeps a product humming after that initial purchase. But how big of a deal is this really?
Oh, you'd be surprised. Manufacturers are figuring out that this aftermarket can be pure gold. It's a huge chunk of their revenue, sometimes even more than half, coming from these aftermarket sales. It's about going that extra mile, providing that value that keeps customers coming back.
It's like that old saying, you don't make money selling the printer, you make money selling the ink, but on a much, much larger scale. And I get the loyalty piece, but for companies that really get this aftermarket thing right, what are the benefits strategically?
That's a great question. It boils down to building a business that can really last. I mean, when you're good at the aftermarket, you're not just selling a product anymore. You're building loyalty, creating that bond with the customer. They start to rely on you, not just for the initial purchase, but for that feeling of knowing they're in good hands.
It's about building that trust, proving you're there for them long after that sale is done.
You got it. And to make this whole thing tick, manufacturers are using some pretty slick technology. One of the big ones is CPQ software. Configure, price, quote might sound familiar.
CPQ. Yeah, I think I've heard of that. Isn't that usually used for those really complex sales, like configuring a massive piece of industrial equipment?
That's right. CPQ software has always been the go-to for simplifying those complex product sales, making sure quotes are accurate, and streamlining those initial sales. But, and this is where it gets interesting, manufacturers are realizing that CPQ can be just as important, maybe even more so, for those aftermarket sales.
Really? How so? Aftermarket seems pretty simple. You need a part, you order it done. Where does all the complicated configuration come in?
I know, it seems pretty straightforward, right? But even replacing parts can get tricky. You got to make sure the customer is getting the exact right part for their specific product model, which might have its own quirks or modifications, upgrades even. Then there's pricing. You got to factor that in accurately and get a quote out the door fast.
Right, so it's about making sure everything lines up perfectly, no room for error.
But how does CPQ help with all of that? Okay, so picture this. You're a farmer, right? Your tractor breaks down, middle of nowhere. You need a specific part, and you need it, like, yesterday. A CPQ system, it can take into account everything your tractor's model, the year it was made, even your location to make sure you're getting the right part. It can factor in things like local regulations, even the climate, all that information just ready to go.
Wow, that's incredible. So instead of digging through manuals or spending hours on the phone, praying you get someone who actually knows what they're talking about, the system just knows.
Exactly. No more waiting on hold forever while someone's scrambling through catalogs and outdated price lists. CPQ swoops in to save the day. It pulls up all the info it needs, configures the right part, factors in any discounts or pricing, and boom, accurate quote in seconds.
Now that is efficient. Talk about a win-win for everyone. And speaking of making things easier, let's talk about those customer portals you mentioned.
You know, those customer portals, when they're done right, they can be a real game changer for the aftermarket. It's like
Uh-huh.
having everything about a product all in one place online.
Like a one-stop shop. Find your manuals, order parts, troubleshoot problems, all in one spot.
Exactly. And when you combine these portals with those CPQ tools, it's a whole new level of convenience. Customers can just log in, see their entire product history, the exact parts they need, check availability, compare prices, place orders in a few clicks. It's all about giving the customer the power.
No more digging through drawers for serial numbers. No more endless hold music. I like the sound of that.
It's a win-win, right? Streamlines everything. And because the CPQ system's already baked in, everything's accurate and up to date.
So it's not just about convenience, it's about getting it right every time.
100%.
Hmm.
Even with the best intentions, people make mistakes. But when you automate these processes, you're taking out that human error factor. Makes a big difference. Builds trust, and that's what keeps customers coming back for more.
Makes sense. Speaking of high-tech solutions, you mentioned artificial intelligence is making a splash in the aftermarket. How's AI changing things up?
All right, picture this. Your fridge, right before the old filter even thinks about quitting, orders its own replacement. Or your car, based on how you actually drive, not just some random date, tells you it's time for a tune-up. That's the power of AI. It's about knowing what you need before you even know you need it.
Sounds like something out of a movie. But how does it actually work? Is my fridge about to start talking to me?
No, no magic involved. It's all about data. These AI algorithms, they analyze massive amounts of information, how the product's being used, past maintenance records, all of it, and they can predict future needs with crazy accuracy.
So it's like a crystal ball, but for when my dishwasher's about to spring a leak.
Kind of. It's about using data to make smart predictions, and that's huge. For manufacturers, it's about having the right inventory, less downtime, even stopping problems before they happen.
That sounds like every manufacturer's dream, but what's in it for the customer?
It's all about making things easier, less hassle, less stress, and products that just work better, longer. Imagine you log into your customer portal and boom, personalized suggestions tailored just for you and how you use your stuff. It's like having a personal assistant for all your products.
So we've got these amazing tools like CPQ and customer portals, and now AI is taking things to a whole other level. But how does this all fit together for businesses? Is it just about, making more money?
Profits are definitely part of it. A successful aftermarket can be a huge moneymaker, but it's bigger than that. It's about building those lasting relationships with customers, the kind that makes a company stand out. When you shift from thinking about one sale to the entire journey of the customer, that's when you create a win-win that benefits everyone.
So we're shifting like the whole mindset. It's not just about the transaction anymore. It's about building a real relationship with the customer.
You got it. And that shift, it goes way beyond just profits even. It can actually be good for the environment too.
Now, that's what I call a win-win-win. Happy customers, business is doing well, and a healthier planet. But before we wrap up, I'm curious. Could we take this kind of thinking, this customer-centric approach, and use it in other industries? Like, what about healthcare or maybe education?
Ooh, that's a great question. It really gets to the heart of what we're talking about here. Imagine a healthcare system that's proactive, anticipating what you need before you even have to ask. Or what about education that's tailored to you, adapting to how you learn best?
Now, those are some cool ideas. It makes you think, what if we saw every interaction not just as a one-time thing, but as a chance to build something lasting?
It's about playing that long game, focusing on real value, not just quick wins. And that's something that goes way beyond just making stuff.
Totally. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the aftermarket. From revenue lifecycle management to those awesome tools like CPQ, customer portals, and AI, we've covered a lot.
It's been great exploring all this with you. And remember, this is really just the start. As technology keeps evolving, we're going to see even more cool customer-focused stuff in the aftermarket.
It's a pretty exciting time to be a customer. We want to hear from you. What really stood out to you? What questions are you left with? Jump into the conversation on social media and let us know.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the stuff that matters.
And hey, remember, the most valuable products aren't always the brand new, shiny ones. Sometimes it's the products that have been taken care of, improved over time, the ones that show a real commitment to the customer. That's what makes the difference.